Hi, Wayne McIntosh here, and I'm with Rodney Ford today talking about music. Rodney is a drummer with iconic Australian jazz band Galapagos Duck, and I'd like to talk to Rodney today about his experience of touring with Barney Kessel and Herb Ellis back in the 70s. So how did that gig come about, Rod?
Well, it was, I don't think I was actually supposed to do it because I didn't start playing till late, so I'd only been playing about 2 years when I got the gig, and it was quite unexpected, but somehow I managed to get it, and we did. I think it was a guy called Peter Noble was the agent for it, and anyway, it was Dave Ellis on the bass, fantastic bass player, makes basses as well. And Dave Ellis and Herb Ellis. It was quite a funny situation, you know, with the Ellis family and the rest of us, you know. But yeah, so we ended up. I got the gig, and we had our first rehearsal at the basement. And you can imagine, even though I was probably 24, 25. I started playing when I was about 20 when I left the army. So, well, no, probably earlier than that. Probably a bit earlier, because I kept wondering what I was doing the gig. There's a million drummers there that had reputations that were probably better suited to it. But anyway, I ended up doing it. And we had our first rehearsal at the basement, and we played a couple of jazzes and, you know, medium fours and a couple of fast ones and a ballad, and then Barney Kessel said, "Oh, well, we'll do a Latin now, Green Dolphin Street." So we started, da, 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 da. And at that time in Latin, I was listening a lot to Aieto Maria, who I still listen to, and I don't hear anyone still playing the way that he played. He's absolute virtuoso, a genius, you know, once in a lifetime sort of player. And everything he played, doesn't matter what he did, it always sounded different. And I always had that thing in me. That's why I gravitated towards that sort of playing. And when he came out with Chicoria, doing Spain and all those sort of things, he played fields to this day I've never heard anyone else play, ever. And anyway, so that's what I was into, you know. So when he said Latin, what his idea of Latin and my idea of Latin were like poles apart, and I had no idea what to expect from him, because, I mean, I'd listened to Barney Kessel a little bit, not much. I knew he was a legend, all the stuff. My mother actually really loved him. She said that she could put, which I was quite shocked at when I told her I was doing the tour. She said, "Oh, he can put his slippers under my bed any time," which I really couldn't believe that she said it. You know, I went, wow, you know. So anyway, I had my mother's consent anyway about it. She thought it was a good idea. But so anyway, we're back to the Latin thing, and he says, "Right, here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, da 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 da." We get about, I don't know, 12 bars into it. He says, "Stop, stop, stop." He said, "That's good, Rodney." He said, "Do you know another Latin feel?" And I said, "Oh yeah, we can talk." So we go 3, 4, da 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 da, ding 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 ding. Stop. He said, "Do you know another one?" And so I got to about, this went on, and I did about 5 different Latin feels, and at the end I said, "Look, Barney," I said, "that's about it. I can't think of anything else to play on this tune. I think we might, that's it. It's got to be one of those 5, or if you can tell me of those 5 which is the closest, maybe that's the best way." And he said, "Oh, no, it's all right. We won't do any Latin tunes." And I went, oh, like my heart sunk, you know. And anyway, so that was part of it. And then I forgot to mention, before we actually even started, I set up the drums and, you know, put the cymbals up and all that. And before I'd actually hit the drums to test anything, he said, "Can I borrow your stick?" That's very unusual. No one's ever said that to me before. So he gets a stick and he goes ding, 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 ding. He said, "Oh, I don't like that one. You got another one?" This is before the Latin thing, right? So, okay, so take that one off, grab another one, put that on. He goes ding, ding, ding. "I don't like that one either. Have you got another one?" so I had four. I bought my four best cymbals,
Mm.
and he didn't like any of them. And I thought, wow,
You're off to a good start.
wow, these guys are this is torture. You know, I haven't even started yet, and this is before the Latin thing, mind you.
So this is all Barney Kessel.
This is all Barney Kessel.
So what's Herb saying about it?
Herb didn't say a word.
Yeah.
No, not a word. And everything was all right with Herb. Herb didn't worry about anything, you know. Anyway, so I set up, and finally I said to him, look, Barney, I said, if you don't like any of these four, I said, I've got another two at home which are twice as bad as them. If you don't like that, you're really going to hate them, you know.
Yeah.
So he went eeny, meeny, mighty, I use that one, you know. So I put that one on, and off we go. We get to start the rehearsal, and we get into the Latin thing. And
So traditionally, though, with those guys in that era, they generally start a concert with a burner, wouldn't they? So what do they? And from my knowledge of those guys, one of the ones they would have done is the Flintstones theme. They do that, or
yeah, but look, I don't think they. No, they more or less started medium tempo.
Okay.
If I look, it's a long 70s. I can't remember exactly what we started with, and they had a. I was quite surprised to find out later on that all the talking they did, they were so funny. I mean, I laughed myself stupid every night. Their timing for comedy and on there was as good as their playing, you know.
Okay.
And in fact, it was 2 weeks into the tour when I thought, wait a minute, you know, they're saying pretty much the same thing, you know. Like they always said it slightly differently, you know, but around about the same tune, the same thing would come into it, same bit of humour about it, you know. For example, he'd say, right now we'd like to do a duet just with Herb and I would like to do a duet. This is Barney talking, right? And in order to do that, we're going to have to ask Rodney and Dave Ellis to leave the stage. It's not that they've done anything wrong. It's just that for us to perform in the duo context, that's going to be how it's going to have to be. They'll have to leave the stage. So can you give them a hand while they leave the stage? You know,
Right.
I mean, full of stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, another one was Herb Ellis would play this solo thing on a Beatles tune Yesterday or something like that, and he'd do it. He'd do the intro, and he had a handkerchief over his hand, you know, and he'd move it up and down. You just see this handkerchief moving up and down the fretboard, and Barney'd say, he said, "You've got no idea what I've been trying to find out those chords forever, but he just won't show me," you know, stuff like that. And but they always did it, being jazz players. They always did it slightly different every night, you know. And then I realised that, you know, because I was so overwhelmed actually working with them, firstly, and then secondly, to play with them, I was too worried about the tunes to worry about their patter. You know, you can imagine a young guy. That's the last thing I was thinking of, you know. And anyway, it just seemed that, it was quite a surprise to me that they worked it all out. And then I actually asked them one night. I asked Herb. I said, you know, did you write all this out? He said, no, we got a script writer in LA to write it out for us. You know, so they actually, their show, all the patter in their show in between the songs, they tell the script writer what songs they're going to do. They tell them their idea of humour, what they do, and then he would write the script around that, you know.
That's probably where you and I have been going wrong.
Yeah, well, you just won't say the lines I give you. You always want to
thanks.
use your own lines, you know. That's where the problem lies. No, but it was just an incredible experience, and more on the Latin thing was that at the end of the tour. Oh no, sorry. Before that, I was talking to someone. I said, "What is it?" I think Willie Qua, who actually is in the Duck with us, he ended up playing the drums with them on the next tour, and he come from a more traditional sort of. His mother was a piano player, used to play stride piano and Dixie, a lot of Dixie stuff. And so he had a closer thing to understanding where they came from than I did, you know. And when I saw him in the Duck, when Willie was about 16, a lot of the Latin things he used to play, they were shuffle Latins, like duck, like New Orleans, sort of duck, 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 right? I'm playing, when I'm playing Latin, I'm going, you know, and not thinking for a second that that would disturb them, you know. And so anyway, it turns out that what they really wanted was like New Orleans, that's what, shuffle Latin, you know. And if you go back and listen to a lot of those gets and all that sort of stuff, he was the first one to actually come into 8ths and 16ths sort of Latin, you know. But before that, a lot of the American jazz guys, everything was you know. And so that's why I had the problem with them. And if they would have said play shuffle thing, it would have been fine. You know, I could have gone to it immediately. But anyway, at the end of it all, I was talking to Dave Ellis was talking to Herb Ellis, and he said, "Tell me," he said, "why is Barney giving Rodney such a hard time?" He said, "Don't take your nose." He said, "Barney travels the world. You know, he goes to Sweden, Norway, England, all different places, you know." And he said, he always gets these young guys that are out to make their mark and prove themselves, you know. So when he goes to a gig and he sees a young guy, which I was at that stage, I was, you know, had the long hair and looked like I was ready to kill. And he said he looks at that and he goes, "Right, I'm going to have to squash that one." You know, so he just hits him over the before he even heard me play, he was doing it to me, you know. And then Herb told Dave the story. He said, he said, well, he was in England, and he had this double bass player, and the double bass player was really good, you know. And he said, but the only problem is that he wouldn't shut up, you know, like when Barney was doing his solo. So it's guitar, bass, drums, right? So when it came to his solos, the bass player was playing solos behind Barney's solos, you know. And so Barney thought, all right, what I'll do is I'll just let him play. I'll play him out. I'll just give him solos all over the place so that he's got nothing left to say, basically. So anyway, this goes on for one set, and the bass player kept playing solos and solos behind Barney, and then the next set the same thing, and at the end of the second set, the bass player comes up and puts his arm around Barney. He says, "Well, Barney," he says, "what do you think?" And he says, he says, "Mate, fantastic." He said, "We've only got one problem though." He said, "What's that?" He said, "You and me," he said, "we need a bass player." So that was, when I heard that story, it made sense to me of what was going on, you know. And look, at the end of it, like I must admit, in the beginning, a couple of times in the rehearsal before I started playing, I wanted to punch him out, you know. He was so rude, you know. And in contrast, Herb Ellis was the complete gentleman, you know, like just so beautiful to work with, you know. And if he had a problem, he'd come and tell you in a certain way. For example, you know, he'd be going medium swing, he goes ding 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 doo 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 doo, and we get to a certain part, and Herb would say, when they wanted to dig in and groove, one of them, he'd be going like and you know, the drummer going. I'm trying not to play too outside, you know, just play the groove. But he said, when I want it to cook, he said, as soon as you hear me go, I want to cross stick on 4. So when they wanted it to burn, when they wanted to sit there and groove and then take off from there, but you know, they'd be going, you know, and it was like a signature thing, and they had a lot of little cues like that, which Americans, that's when I went to the States, that's what I found, is that the bands, they all nearly have, they've got this catalogue of cues that they do, you know, which still to this day you don't really hear so much in Australian bands, you know. Everyone plays good, but the dynamic thing doesn't come from the brilliance. It comes from this one shock little thing that they all. You think, wow, how do they all do that together? Well, they all did it together because they know when that comes in what to do. It's like a plan, you know. It may not come where they expect it, but when it happens, they all go straight into that thing, you know.
So there were many of those cues you had to...
Well, look, there was things like they did, you were asking me earlier about the fast tunes, you know, and what they opened with. Well, eventually we get, the two ones I remember were the Flintstones, and the other one was North by Northwest, is it? Northeast? Something. I don't know. What is it? North by...
Yeah, I'm not sure about that tune.
Anyway, but like that's, to this day, that's the fastest I've ever played. You know, the Flintstones was about 1, 2, 1, 2, you know, and man, they burned. And when I first started playing with it, I just felt like I was behind the beat all the time. And Herb pulled me aside in a real beautiful way, and he said, "Rodney," he said, "don't chase Barney. That's where he plays. He plays half a beat ahead of everybody else." He said, "If you chase him, you'll never catch him because he'll just be half a beat ahead of you wherever you go to." And
that's great.
You know, so which was a real learning curve. You know, real learning curve to.
So you had the chops to cut the tempos relaxed.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it was relaxed or not, but I got the gig basically because I could do those tempos, you know, even though I don't know why. Probably I never played that sort of tempos. I wasn't a bebop player or anything like that. I'd come up through playing with mainly with Roger Frampton and playing that sort of, a lot of outside sort of stuff, and which wasn't all constant time things, you know. So it was quite a kick, quite a learning curve for me to realise, because I'd started late, that I had to go and learn how to play time things a bit better, you know. And then playing later on with Errol Buddle and Col Nolan reinforced what I didn't know, what I knew that I didn't know, you know.
So they had 1 or 2 ballads in the set, or
yeah. That
you did 1 or 2 sets with them.
Look, it's a long time ago. I have this feeling that it was mainly 2, but occasionally 3.
Okay.
Occasionally, you know. If it was a big concert, it was 2, I think. But I think no, I'm just trying to think back. I think mostly it was probably 2, yeah. Probably 2. Yeah.
So they had a couple of ballads.
Yeah.
They asked for anything specifically on the drums in the ballads? Anything they wanted to hear in particular?
Mostly what they didn't want to hear. You know.
Yeah, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear what that last guy gave us.
Last night, yeah. No, one of the interesting things was that, getting back to the Latin part, is that when we got to Tamworth, of all places, the country capital of Australia, we'd been playing for nearly 2 weeks, and we just played ballads, medium tempos, really fast tempos, medium tempos, ballads, medium tempos, back and forwards, and we're all so sick of it, you know. And finally, Barney said, he said, "Right, let's play a Latin. We'll do Green Dolphin Street." And I thought, right, well, I don't really care what you think about my feels. I'm going to play it for all I'm worth tonight, you know. So in Tamworth we played it, and I have to say I played good. You know, the place went apart when I played the feels and the solos, you know. And when we came off, he was such a hard guy. He came off and I've got more applause than they have for this particular part, you know. And he came off and said, "Rodney, it's not that you can't play." And I went, "Wow, these guys are tough, man." Yeah. You know. But because I was sort of young and I was determined to stick it out and get the experience, you know, which I did. And one of the highlights of it was, I remember we were in Newcastle, and my hero still is to this day. He just passed away this year, and 2015. What's his name? So he's so great. I can't remember his name. Alan Turnbull. Yeah, Alan Turnbull, who's like, I mean, I've been around the world quite a bit, and I still haven't seen anyone, including all the American guys, that had a touch like that. Like, he could make a cymbal talk, you know. He was, and to this day, I still hear, when I hear, see, in my head, I see him playing and hear what he used to do with it. And anyway, so we're in Newcastle, and the band before us, Alan was in the band, and it was, the band leader was a guy called Dave Van Creek, who was an American guy that came out to live years ago, and he's since passed away. But he was in the original Dave Brubeck quintet. He was I think, I'm not even sure whether Paul Desmond was in the band when he was in it, but the original band that Brubeck had was a quintet, and he was in that quintet. So they're out there playing their jazz, and Herb's on the side there. We're watching this band, and Herb turns around to me. He's listening to it all and watching Alan, and he says, you know, he says, you suit our band much better than that guy. And I thought, why would he say that? You know, he said, because this guy was supposed to be the one doing it with us. You know,
Okay.
And I don't know how it happened that he didn't. You know, if it was me getting him, I would have got him.
Okay.
You know, and somehow, I don't know how it worked out, but I ended up doing it. But when they said that, I went, wow, that's really, you know, not that I ever reached, I don't think I'll reach any of the heights that Alan Turnbull did, you know, as a player. He's just a real special, one in a million sort of guy, you know. But yeah, so there was lots of things to be learnt, things that were great from some. It was pretty stock standard what they did. They were all cues. They did things pretty much the same way when they played, you know. And I think a guy that you know from Cairns that passed away the year before, Neville Turner, he said the thing about a lot of those guys, the really good guys, is they have pretty much arranged everything, and then they learn their arrangements back to front, and then they make them sound as though they've never played it before.
Yeah, it's the first time, first note for it. Yeah.
So it's just relaxed, and the surprise bits still take them by surprise. Everyone's surprised, including them, apparently, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that would have been a special sort of gig to do. Two greats, the legends of jazz guitar.
Yeah, well, look, it was, as I say, it was a great thing to think about years later, you know. I was still learning stuff off it later on, you know. After that, I started working a bit with Errol Buddle and Col Nolan, but more with Errol than Col. And Errol was fantastic to play with. Like, he's just got, I would say his feeling to play with was as good as theirs, you know. He just had that groove and that time that, you know, you can pick a million players out, but that when Errol plays something, when he's on fire, he just soars over the top. And he also was the lead alto in a lot of big bands, you know, so he knew how to sit on top of a band to wail over the top of the band, you know, like he'd just pick out, he knew what sound would cut through the band, and he knew rhythms, he'd play rhythms and stuff that would, no matter what the arrangement was, it would cut through it. So when you played with him in a small band, it was just dynamite, you know. And I have to tell this story about Errol because it's very similar to the one with Barney Kessel, you know. One night we were working at the Soup Plus in Sydney, and I've been working with Errol for, I don't know, about 6-7 months or something, every Saturday or Friday, Saturday at the Soup Plus. And one night I said to Errol, I said, hey Errol, I said, you know, I've been working with you for 6 months now, and I said, you've never said anything to me about whether anything's right or whether anything's wrong. I said, I find that really, particularly after my experience with the other guys, you know, I said, it's unusual. I said, it's either one of two things that I'm thinking. Either I'm so good that I don't need to know anything, or I'm so bad it's not worth telling me. You know, it won't make any difference to me. I said, what if you had to say? If you had to say something to me about my playing, I said, what would you say? And he was standing there talking to a couple of people, and I was there with him. There was a break in the conversation. I just asked him that, and I had a beer in my hand. He had a beer in my hand, and I'm sitting there with my beer, waiting for an answer, and there's no answer. Like he didn't look at me, and there was no answer. And I thought, I wonder if he heard me. You know, I couldn't believe, like, either you would make a smart wisecrack to say, oh, you know, I wouldn't worry about it, or you should do this, or whatever it was. You would think there would have been an answer. And I thought, wow, that's no answer at all. You know, that's probably even worse than I thought, you know. So I go back to the bar, get another drink, and so this is 10 minutes interlude between when I asked him the question. And just as I'm getting back up in the stand to go on the drums, he says, 2 and 4 on the hi-hat louder. He'd thought about it for that time. He just didn't want to say anything. Yeah. He wanted to make sure he really had to think about what he was going to tell me, you know. And he thought about it for 15 minutes and waited for me to come put my foot back on the bandstand. Yeah. And he said, I'll never ever forget it. 2 and 4 louder on the hi-hat. That was it. And I'll tell you what, it was because of where I'd come from, playing with Roger Frampton and that sort of music, which the idea was that sort of like more Roy Haynes-ish sort of stuff, and Alan, who I'd watched, Alan Turnbull, who I'd watched a lot, was that like Alan's idea of 2 and 4 on the hi-hat, he said, if other musicians, if they need 2 and 4 on the hi-hat, they should go and practice, buy a metronome and learn how to play with that. Very funny man, Alan. You know? Yeah, he didn't want to know about going on 2 and 4. You know, yeah. He thought it was an insult to to a drummer, basically. You know, but he developed in a lot of ways too. You know, he played with a lot of different people, and he decided that's the way he wanted to play. He loved Roy Haynes, who, I have to say this while I'm there, is that Roy Haynes is probably the least technically proficient. You know, didn't practice heaps and heaps like most of the other guys. You know, he just had it in his hands. He's got rhythm coming out of every limb of his body, unbelievable, you know. And he's now 85 or something like that, and he still plays the way he did when he was, you know, in 1970s, you know, more development of it, but no 2 and 4 on the hi-hat much, you know. Yeah, so those learning curves with those, and also Cole Nolan was great to play with, because Cole had such a groove that you just had to do that. If you wanted to, once he got into that, because of my experience with Herb and Barney, you know, I knew he'd play a lot of cues like that. That's the era Cole was from. So you go, do-do-do-do-do, bop, bop. Bop, 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 you know, all little cue things like that, and Cole was funny because he had a great sense of humour, and we'd get to a gig, and you'd be on him like glue, because I'd seen lots of guys play with him. I'd seen Warren Daly play with him. Who's the other guy? Today's Show. Anyway, and I'm watching him, and they tried to get all his accents, and they'd think a downbeat was coming, you know, go, ba, ba, da, dee, do, 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 ba. They'd think that was coming, you know, and he'd watch them, and he'd go, ba, ba, da, ba, ba, da, ba. And they go bang on the downbeat, and he'd do it just after them, you know. And so I thought, I'm waiting for this guy, you know, and I started to nail it sort of okay, because he was always trying to fool me, you know, that I'd go either off the beat and bash the shit out of it so that make a fool of myself, you know.
Yeah.
And then he'd laugh his head off if you missed it, you know. It's great. They're good days for all that, you know.
So you play drums with Galapagos Duck, the band keeping you busy?
Yeah, it's been, I guess I've been with them about 15 years now. I don't know, I was on the boats and I came off about 2,000 P&O boats, and got the call, and I've sort of been with them pretty much ever since. And yeah, I really enjoy it because it's a chance for me to play a lot of different things, and you know, I mean, I don't think I was ever meant to be like the real outside, even though I played outside jazz a lot when I started. I also, at that same stage, I loved the Beatles, and I loved Herbert even, you know. You know, a lot of those tunes that they had in those days, I used to really like them, and but I also liked listening to Coltrane, although I didn't understand it. I can't say I understood it a real lot, but like a lot of other players, and some would pretend that they liked it more than others, but I did love, I was essentially a trumpet player when I started, and I loved Clifford Brown and Miles, and Miles to this day is still probably my favourite player, because you never feel like, you always feel like you're listening to someone creating a tune, not playing up and down exercises, you know, and not that there's anything wrong with that. When someone does the patterns and all that really well, that's fantastic to listen to too, you know. But just my when I listen to Miles, I just get taken away. I think, wow, this guy, he just makes music. It's just another tune he makes. It's not necessarily improvising. He's improvising another tune over that tune all the time, and it's spectacular. Still to this day, and I get to appreciate it even more every time, you know. And I love, with Miles, I love the fact that the players that he picks were really instrumental, particularly the drummers. Well, they all were, but the drummers put it into he couldn't go a certain way without those rhythms being there, like Art, what's his name? Art Taylor, was it? No. Philly Joe was one, and Jimmy Cobb, then Philly Joe, and then Tony Williams, you know, and each one of those was slightly different. Would open it up a little bit more until he got to Williams, who really opened it up, you know. And so the point being, in the Duck, we don't play a lot of that, but we do get to play a bit that way, you know. And our audience is probably an older audience, and but I found that, and I still like to play outside stuff, but now I enjoy playing the inside as well, and I do a bit of singing in the Duck, and Willie Quire, who was sort of the original drummer in the Duck, he's still in it, and he wasn't in it for, I think he had a break of 20 years and came back, but yeah, we have a good situation where I go out the front, do a bit of talking and singing, and then Willie goes and plays the drums and plays drum solos and stuff, and yeah, so it's good. We play a bit of funk stuff, a bit of reggae, a bit of Latin.
Okay.
Mostly straight Latin, not the shuffle Latin.
Yeah. And so you're back out on tour shortly? Yeah,
we have a 2-week, because two of the guys from the Duck, Willie Quire now lives up in Surfers, and we have a great piano player called Will Sargentson, who's from New Zealand, and he's a really good stride, I don't know if that's the right way to call it, but he can play a lot of the Art Tatum stuff, and I can't give you anything but love. Fats Waller, you know, he plays a lot of those sort of things, and some night it's of that type of piano playing. I've never played with anyone that can play it like he does. You know, a lot of people come close, but he's quite staggeringly brilliant, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Brings the house down most of the nights. You know. And he plays a lot of classical stuff as well. And then we have John Connolly, who's essentially the band leader. He plays, he writes a lot of the tunes. He writes really great tunes and plays guitar, bass.
Mm-hmm.
And he also, we just finished an album this year, which he wrote quite a few of the tunes on. And so that's been going good. Yeah, it's the band's sort of picking up every time we go out now. We have a good time and it seems to be going well. So
Terrific.
Yeah.
Well, it's been great talking to you, Rod, especially about Barney and Herb, because, you know, you've been a guitar player, so it's of real interest to me, and I'm sure a lot of guitar players out there would like to know a few little insights into life on the road with those guys.
I'd just like to tell you one thing, Wayne, that with guitar players, there's always strings attached.
Yeah, exactly. Boom, boom. Thanks, Rod.